So kinesiology, just as one word, is basically a study of movement. So it's a language or a way to connect with the body and then to find the appropriate remedy. With kinesiology, we can jump straight in and go, okay, body, what is this? What is the thing here? What do I need to do here? What do I need to do there? And then we can gather information very quickly. You can go very directed. So if we take it right back to how the brain works, at the brain stem, we've got the pons and the reticular formation. The job of the pons and the reticular formation is to filter out. Or as you walk around through life, we see everything, we hear everything, we smell everything, we taste everything. And I mean everything. There's like millions bits of information that we can perceive in this very moment right now. And so the brain or the pons and the reticular formation filters out what is important and what is not. Like especially with kinesiology, what we do in the beginning of a session, we do baseline readings where we look at emotions, we look at the stresses, we look at what your life energy is like, we look at how you feel, what's your mood. With kinesiology especially, we say expect the unlock, which means that we keep testing and we keep questioning and we're expecting each test to give us a response. And so if you're curious and if you ask probing questions and see it as an exploration, then you're going to go deep with the work.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. We are back again covering a very ancient topic, kinesiology. This is probably a word you've seen somewhere while you've been looking around on the internet, or people have mentioned it. That's certainly been the case for me, and I know absolutely nothing about what kinesiology is actually about. And I'm joined by an expert in kinesiology and a host of other modalities. This person is so qualified. I have never met anyone like him. Marcus, Dr. Marcus, apologies, Dr. Marcus van der Westhuizen, thank you. We are honored to have you on our show.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. So let's get into it. What do you want to know?
So Marcus, let's start with the first one, kinesiology. What does it actually mean? Because, like I said, I've seen this word in my research, but I haven't really dug into it. What is it all about?
So kinesiology, just as one word, is basically a study of movement. So the practice that we do is applied or specialized kinesiology. So then we separate it from just the study of movement into the practice of looking at where the body holds stresses and how we can release that. So in America, it's called applied kinesiology. In South Africa, we call it specialized kinesiology. And so depending on where you go in the world, we've got slightly different names for it. And it's just to separate it from plain old kinesiology, as in like kinesiology is what physiotherapists and people like that would use as a means to describe the body's limbs in relation to each other, the angles and the movement that a joint is supposed to be able to do. So that's more of this just a study. And then with applied or specialized kinesiology, we're actually looking at how we can fix those things. So it's got its roots in chiropractic. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Chiropractic is quite interesting. You mentioned chiropractor or chiropractic. I don't know what the term for the science is, but it's in my research of historic medicine, homeopathy, Ayurveda, all of those. The chiropractor industry was very, very big in the US back in the 1800s, along with homeopathy and other plant medicines. It was huge. And along with homeopathy, chiropractor discipline also got destroyed, I would say, in America with the growth of pharmaceuticals. Okay, so kinesiology, you say, is the study of movement in the body and seeing where traumas are held in the body. So this, when you mentioned that, I immediately thought of TRE, trauma release exercises. And then there's obviously somatic breathing exercises to release trauma. There's special meditations. There's remedies I can make, plant medicines, Bach flower remedy, for instance. and other type of treatments to release trauma. Is that where kinesiology sort of leads you towards? It leads you towards these other type of treatment protocols, or is there a treatment protocol within kinesiology itself?
So from the way I see kinesiology or applied specialized kinesiology, it's really a container for everything else. So it's a language or a way to connect with the body and then to find the appropriate remedy. So, for example, we work with what's called a database, and the database contains the all the different corrections that we have. So if someone comes and they, let's say we indicate a stress or a trauma or a blockage somewhere, then we can check with the database what is the appropriate correction to do for that specific muscle or that specific line or chakra or whatever we're working with. And that could come in the form of massage or trigger points or a remedy or um, energetic work or anything. So anything can go into this database. So it's really a way to communicate with the body. So like, for example, you do the quantum scans and things like that. That's one way to communicate and to find where the issues lie. And then you would then find what remedy to use based on your scanner. If we do exactly the same scan, but we do it with manual muscle testing, which is what we use in kinesiology, then we can find the same information, but we're doing it manually. So we manually test the muscles to see whether they lock or unlock, whether they can hold strong or whether they are weak in relation to a specific goal or a stress or a trauma or a thought or an idea. So we can do all kinds of testing, whether it's food, allergies, just general movement of muscles, whether it's exercise related, spiritual work, mental work, emotional work, anything. It's a deep, deep, deep topic.
So the way you explained it and how I understood it is like you're actually accessing the same set of information, but you have different means of doing it. So you mentioned the quantum resonance scan that I have. I think you also said you have one. This has actually become quite a common scanning device now that I've seen because it's very affordable, very cost effective, and it's quite easy to use, and it gives you a lot of information. But that's just one way of getting information of what's happening within the body. That particular scan is a quantum resonance, so it uses like electromagnetic signals or pulses go through your body, come back to the machine, and it deciphers it to know what's going on. But you're saying you can also do that manually, right? You can also get information about what's going on in the body by knowing specific points to test, to do some sort of muscle testing, and then you can get a deep, deep idea of what's happening. And so fascinating. And I guess other modalities, many people, like we also spoke about the bioplasm, or you call it the NLS scan. That is another means of accessing information of what's going on in the body, right? And it's so amazing that this can pick up so much detail. Like how are these technologies able to pick up that level of detail of what's going on in the body? I mean, it's just so fascinating. Like the amount of understanding that the ancients that came up with kinesiology and all these sciences, how did they understand so much about what's going on in the body? It's just really difficult to fathom.
It's a very slow process because if you think about it, chiropractic's been around for thousands of years. So there's been records in ancient Egypt of them doing chiropractic adjustments. But the term chiropractic really only came about, I think, in the 1920s or 30s, somewhere around there, which is when they sort of formalized it more. Um, and then it was around 1930 or so when they started to do the first kinesiology related work. And that took about 30 years because it's only by about 1960 or so where they sort of formulate the whole system, and they were still learning and growing and testing, and they would literally test muscles within the body and have multiple people test. They had, I think, initially a group of about 28 people that used to do regular testing, and then they would check between each other to find that they had the right or the same answers. So they wouldn't map anything out until they had everybody with the same answer, and they would test independently. And that took years and years. So it was only about around the 1970s, maybe, where it was more of a formal system, and then it became a little bit more open to the everyday person when Dr. Thie started Touch for Health. And that was a way to introduce kinesiology to the household. And it was meant to be taught to normal, everyday people of the streets. And then the idea was that they then go home and then they teach others. But over the years with Touch for Health, it's developed into a full-blown healing modality that you need to do your 4 modules or 5th module, and then you do it again a second time to become a practitioner, and you can do it a third time to become a teacher. So it's the system has grown quite a bit and has gotten more stronger through the years. But also we've got, like these days, I think we've got about 60, 70 or more branches of kinesiology that's available. So it depends on what you're interested in, where you want to go with it, what it is that you want to test. So we've got people specializing in nutrition. We'll have people specializing in allergies or in sort of real physical exercise related stuff like muscle, like really working with muscles, energetics, depending on where your interests lie. So it's a really broad scope. We can really go anywhere. The major difference between the NLS machine, for example, and kinesiology is that if you're doing an NLS scan, you've got to go set up the machine, and you either do a full scan, which takes an hour, or you have to sit through that very long list and select exactly what it is you want to scan. But either way, it takes time. With kinesiology, we can jump straight in and go, okay, body, what is this? What is the thing here? What do I need to do here? What do I need to do there? And then we can gather information very quickly. You can go very directed and ask your questions directly. So we basically just ask the body questions, and the answers that can come back is binary. It's a yes or a no. So when a muscle unlocks, it's no. When it locks, it's a yes. Obviously, depending on how we are testing. But we can then test to see where issues lie, what the issue is all about, what we can do to fix it, if it's food related or allergy related or things like that. We can actually check whether we can reintroduce the substance that you are allergic to if it's food related. So there's many different things that we can do, and it depends on how deep you want to dive in and where you want to go to with it.
So I love the mention of binary, and this is continuously coming up for me. Is that the language of the universe is binary, but it's much more complex, I think, than we give it credit for. It's a high level kind of binary, like the last podcast I did, which I'll be releasing soon, about tachyon energy. We spoke about sacred geometry being one of the languages of the universe, and sacred geometry is built on straight lines. The straight line might be at different angle, and circles, and that's the building blocks of any sacred geometric shape you can think of, is straight lines and circles, and that's binary. It's the ones and zeros.
A circle is also a straight line if you zoom in close enough.
Yes, it's many straight lines. That's right, exactly. And then also with pendulum work, pendulum work that I've also been trained in. So you have your pendulum, I'm sure, next to you.
I've got plenty.
Yes, I'm also starting to get a collection.
Have you worked with a universal pendulum before?
No, I have not even heard of that concept.
I think you need to get one of those.
Oh, wow.
So it just takes your pendulum work to the next level. So same thing, I also introduce pendulum work in the kinesiology that I do. So it can come up as a correction. But these are quite nice because they work with radiesthesia, energetic frequencies and so forth. So you can use them in a similar way to any other remedy maker or remedy tools that we have.
So the binary way the universe talks, and this is what I was thinking about, like, I've got this QRMA machine. It can measure 300 different points in the body. and I got this machine. I started scanning people, and I thought, like, wow, man, I'm really the shizness of of treatment here. Look, I can see all this detail. It's non-invasive. It just takes a minute. And then I upgraded. I got this bioplasm machine, and this gives literally thousands and thousands and of bits of information, which is so overwhelming. It's difficult to actually know where to go, where to look for. And this is actually what you've honed in on, why kinesiology has a place for us, right, in present day, is you don't need any tools, you don't need expensive equipment, set up, all of that. You just need the skills, and you need go to the body of the patient directly, and you very quickly can, you know, following sort of a process or a procedure, figure out what is it the body needs right now. What is it the body needs to get back to balance or help it get back to homeostasis. It's cost effective, I would imagine.
After you've done your training, yes.
Yeah, the training. Yeah. So
Training takes quite a while. It depends on the branch that you go for and the style that you go, because we've got many different styles.
So what is the style that you focus on? Because you mentioned there's about 60 different styles, right? So what is the one that you specialized in?
Um, I started with Touch for Health, and then like we've got two major schools in South Africa. We've got Ask SA, and then we've got PKP ASA. And I started off with the Touch for Health because that was the only school that I knew about, because that was the one that was introduced to me. And the idea there is that you do Touch for Health, and once you finish that, you go on to Ascent, and then you go on to NOT, and you've got all these different courses that you do, and they tend to be relatively short, but you do them over years and years and years. And then once you've reached 500 hours of training, then you are qualified as a specialized kinesiologist. So I started with Touch for Health, and just before I was supposed to go over to the next training, to the Ascent training, someone else introduced me to ICPKP, which is another school. And with ICPKP, they have a diploma training. So it's an internationally recognized advanced diploma. And so for me, that made more sense, where the Ask SA approach is many different courses with many different modules, and they don't always talk to each other. With ICPKP, you've got one big training where all of your training talks to itself, if that makes sense. So it's within the same system. So then I switched over to ICPKP, and that's a 5-year training. And yeah, so that's the one that I'm working with. But with the whole COVID story that we had a few years ago, you obviously couldn't work with clients, so I just adapted, and then I worked with changing over the protocols and making a lot of the protocols available for online or remote work. So I'm doing a lot of work with pendulums, so I can work in person, like I have with a client in front of me, or I can work offline or remote, where I can do all the testing. And then what I usually do is I would give the client either video or a voice note and notes and images to tell them what to do and where to do it, how to do it. So there's what points to rub or what emotions to think about while they do that. I've had some really good success with that. So especially working with children or animals, where you can't always have the child or the animal right in front of you at that moment, I do remote work, and that works really, really well.
So with all your research, because I would urge the audience, if you go and look at Dr. Marcus's qualifications, it's like literally pages long. I mean, it's so impressive. But it's like, I mean, because this has been a calling for you, I take it your life. You've dedicated your life to understanding the metaphysical, quantum physics, the other side of what we are taught, like mainstream science, right? It's like all supernatural, like maybe difficult for people to comprehend given their education. How do you perceive this stuff to work? Because I'm quite new into this industry, like I mentioned to you, and I'm also trying to like figure out like how is a quantum resonance machine able to pick up this information um, so accurately, or how's the bioplasm able to do it? And the treatments, like, I take little sugar pellets and put it on a radionics machine and charge it with frequency, and somehow this stuff works. Like, but I still don't understand how it works. Is there a way that you can explain to a layperson how does energy work actually work, and why does it work? Because we can't see it. I think that's the perplexing thing for us, and that's why we're all skeptical, is we can't actually see it.
Not everybody can see it. Actually, everybody can see it, but we've been taught to filter it out. Within, like, we have to go right back to like the beginning almost. Like, if you take your brain, right at the brain stem, you've got the pons and the reticular formation. Don't know if you know anything about anatomy and how the body is put together.
Very, very little.
So yeah, okay, so within the training that I do, I started off very, very energetic and metaphysical, but then I had to switch. I have to go to the other end to go learn the very physical stuff like anatomy, and then I had to again come back to the center where I can incorporate both together. So if we take it right back to how the brain works, at the brain stem we've got the pons and the reticular formation. The job of the pons and the reticular formation is to filter out, because as you perceive or as you walk around through life, we see everything, we hear everything, we smell everything, we taste everything. And I mean everything. There's like millions of bits of information that we can perceive in this very moment right now. But if you had to be open to all of that in our sort of our processing abilities of the brain right now in the physical, I think our heads will explode. And so the brain, or the pons and the reticular formation, filters out what is important and what is not. So all the important stuff is brought to the consciousness. The not so important stuff are moved to the subconscious, which we can access through hypnosis and things like that. But the thing is, if we are told that something is not important, we keep filing that to the back. So as children, especially very young children, we're very open and susceptible. We can see all kinds of things. We can see colors, we can see auric fields. Some children even remember past lives. There's many different things. Some people would see ghosts and spirits or energetic stuff. But we kept being told it's not important, or it's not there, you're just imagining it. And then we are programmed to say that's not important, file it away, file it away, file it away. So most people, even though you can see and perceive auric fields as you look at any person around you, whether it's on a video or whether it's the actual physical person in front of you, we are told that it's not important, and so you file it away. So yes, you can see the auric field, you can see energy, you're just not allowing yourself to see it. So with this type of work and this type of training, we basically retrain the brain to say that this is important and I need to see it, or I want to see it. But we also have to be careful, because you don't want to run around with your eyes wide open all day long looking at everybody's auric fields and stuff. It serves no purpose. So you need to learn to switch it on when you need it and to switch it off when you don't need it. So from an energetic perspective, if I'm looking at doing aura healing, for example, I will look at the auric field and I see, oh, there's a crack over there. Let's fix the crack. And because I can see it, I can then interact with it and I can work with it. If I see a dense block of energy sitting in the field, we can gently remove that and we can replace that with lighter energy. Or we can sort of massage out the heavy, dense energy and soften it. So when you look at something like the quantum scanners and things like that, it all works with frequency. And so, like you said, it's got a magnetic pulse that it sends into the body, almost like a sonar or something like that. So it'll send the frequency in, bounce it back. It'll do the reading. So every organ, every meridian, every cell in the body has a specific frequency that's all been mapped out. And so depending on the frequencies that are bounced back when the machine is focusing on a specific organ, it will then receive a specific message, or like, yes, it's good, or no, it's not good, it's too high or it's too low, whatever that frequency is. And that's then listed. With something like kinesiology, what we do is we go through the same process, but we ask the body questions. So I could ask the body, is your liver good? So we've got different muscles that's associated with different organs, with different meridians, because we work with the meridian system with acupuncture points and things like that. So we can work specifically with specific muscles or organs or systems within the body. Or if it's food related stuff, we can actually hold the piece of food next to the body. We normally have it next to the cheek, or you can have it on the tongue. And we can test the body how it reacts or responds to that specific food substance. So yeah, when it comes to layman's how do things work, I always say that if like a microwave oven, for example, do you understand the mechanics of how a microwave oven works?
So that's actually a good question because I haven't used a microwave for maybe 15 years.
No, me neither. I haven't used one in like 20 years, but it's just a tool, like a television. How does a television work?
Television, it's photons of light, right? So there's for me, it's like little pixels on this, or television's different. Television's a screen.
And how does that work?
Yeah, I actually don't actually understand all the physics.
So my next question then is, even though you don't understand how a television works, does that mean it doesn't work, or still works, whether you understand it or not?
No, it works perfectly. It works perfectly fine. But
So we don't need to understand how things work. They still work.
but I can see the television, right? So that's for me the confirmation. I can see the television. Maybe I don't understand how the electrons and the signals and all that back end science. I don't see that, but right now immediately I can see and put on television and see something on the screen. So that will confirm any skepticism.
And a microwave oven?
And a microwave, because then my food is hot, right?
Yes, but you still don't know how it works.
No, but the confirmation is that yes, it does work. But the confirmation for me is that the food is hot. With energy work, maybe my question is with energy work sometimes because I don't really understand how it works. Sometimes it works differently to like I expected. So for example,
We first need to get rid of expectations. So yes, we need to have an open mind. We have to be open and ready to receive, but we also don't want to hold on too tight to that expectation. So yeah, like you said, it can present in different ways. So sometimes you would have what we call a healing crisis, where your issue that the person came with actually aggravates. It gets stronger. But that's also proof. It shows that we've moved something. We've taken an illness that was maybe this big and we squished it into a smaller space of time. So now it becomes exaggerated for a short period of time and then it disappears. Or an issue would just disappear. That's also proof that it works again. I think the biggest thing, like especially with kinesiology, what we do in the beginning of a session, we do baseline readings where we look at emotions, we look at the stresses, we look at what your life energy is like, we look at how you feel, what's your mood. And then at the end of the session, we come back to those things again. How do you feel now? What's your stress level now? What's your life energy right now? So we create a comparison. So even if it's the smallest little movement, we can see that there's been some movement. And people will see a difference. It doesn't always take one session. Sometimes you need multiple sessions, but we can see really good results from that. As an example, I had a lady who brought her 12-year-old daughter to me for an extreme fear of heights. Like she couldn't even get up the stairs at school, and she would had to hold on to the walls and stuff like that. So extreme fear of heights. I think we did about maybe 5 sessions, and we were able to map out exactly where the fear came from, and uh, it was a time that she herself didn't even have a conscious memory of, but because her mom was sitting in on session, her mom could confirm everything. We even had I think it was in this first session, we had generational trauma that came up that went back 2 or 3 generations. And again, her mom was able to confirm that information. And it was like, we would say, this is exactly what it is. And the mom could go, yes, yes, I heard this in this story from my grandmother type thing. And within 5 sessions, at the end of the session, the girl's eyes just lit up and she looked at her mom and she says, I want to go paragliding. And the mom says, you go downstairs, wait for me at reception. I'm just going to go pay for my session quick. And then as the daughter left, the mom says, you're going to need to balance me. I've got an extreme fear of heights as well. So, so it ended up the daughter had some of the generational trauma that she was holding on. It wasn't necessarily hers, but they went paragliding after that. So that's proof that it works.
So my question, which I think you actually answered by the story, because my question was, I have had patients who have had the healing crisis that you described. In homeopathy, we get taught it's called a pull out. They call it a pull out process because you're pulling something out usually. In other spiritual work, I've heard of it being spoken of as activating a process, but it all essentially means the same thing. Sometimes those remedies that I give can just like do magic and create such quick and accelerated healing, but it will be very, very uncomfortable, but it can happen. But a lot of the time, it's very subtle. And then, even I would say sometimes it doesn't work. But this is where you've answered the question for me, is that it might be something else that is the cause, right? It might be a generational trauma issue. And I'm treating physical, mental, emotional stuff, but I'm not hitting the mark because it's actually maybe a past life problem that needs to be fixed. And this is the beauty of having all these modalities. Now it's actually making sense to me. Like, okay, this is why you actually need to have so many modalities. It's not just the ego thing, it's actually the tools in your toolbox. You can't just walk around with a spanner and a hammer and a screwdriver. You've got very limited things you can do, right? But as you have become a better toolsman, you're going to have a workshop full of tools, right? If I go to a good worksman's workshop, I might see 100 different tools and they're all perfect. He knows how to use them. He's trained in them. He's skilled. He knows when to bring which tool out depending on what he's trying to work on. And this is the beauty of what you've explained to me. It's like a real aha moment, This is a big understanding or understanding that I've come to just by hearing that story. So thank you for that, Marcus. So this is how you work, right? And maybe the next question is, how do you know, like, how would you figure out what it is? Because there's so many layers, right? There's the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, there's past trauma, past lives, there's this trauma. How do you like navigate that? Because that to me is so fascinating. I don't know if there's a simple way to explain it, or maybe it's just you need to have decades of experience.
For me, it's sort of it's a bird's eye view. So a client will walk in, they'll give me a few sentences. It literally feels like I'm flying backwards and I'm seeing everything from above, and I go, oh, okay, there we go, that's the issue. And when I was younger, I used to just go to the client and say, that's the issue, and they would say, no, that's not. And there would be a little bit of a, not an argument, but there's like, they don't quite see it, but I'm seeing it. And I found that that wasn't a good way to work, because even though I would see exactly what the issue was, the client was not ready to see it. And so what I've done with my work is I get my bird's eye view. I see what the issue is, and then I see where the client is in relation to the issue, and then I start asking them questions to lead them to what that cause is, so that they can then they can then physically see it for themselves and get the aha moment, and then they go, oh, this is where the issue comes. So the clients who work with me, who know me really well, by the time they get their aha moment, they go, oh, you knew, how long have you known, and why didn't you tell me? And I just found that it's not beneficial to point at something when the person's not ready to see it. So I think for people who start out, see it as an exploration. With kinesiology, especially, we say expect the unlock, which means that we keep testing and we keep questioning, and we're expecting each test to give us a response, instead of just expecting it to hold, or instead of expecting it to lock, we're expecting it to give us an answer of sorts. And so if you're curious, and if you ask probing questions, and see it as an exploration, then you're going to go deep with the work. It's when we are not curious and we don't want to go deep, then you're not going to get very far. So I see each session as an exploration. I see each session as I'm walking in and I know absolutely nothing. Because if I walk in thinking that I know what's going on, then my cup is half full already. So I want to go in with an empty cup, and I want to fill it up by asking questions and by exploring and seeing it as an adventure.
And because you know how the whole map sort of works, you can navigate yourself. And it's binary, right? So you go ask the first question, yes or no. Depending on your answer, you'll go to this way or that way, type of thing. And that's how you end up at your goal and finding the endpoint. So would you use a quantum scan first? Would you like start this client and do a quantum scan, get a like you would say a bird's eye view of what's happening, and then go, or you prefer just going completely blank slate, like you also mentioned? Like that's probably better too.
It all depends on what the person's presenting and what they're coming with and what they are wanting to receive. I mean, I've had many surprises over the 30 odd years that I've been doing this work. Um, so you just don't always know. What is important, I think the most important thing as a healer is to know when to approach something from a spiritual direction, when to approach it from an emotional or a mental or a physical direction. And then that's your platform that you start with. But usually what I do is I follow the client's innate wisdom as well. So I'll always ask the client, what modality or what approach would you like to take? Um, as an example, I once had a client who came with a list of issues, a very long list of issues, and he wanted shiatsu. And I was like, no, no, no. For this particular list of issues that you have, I would recommend this or this or this. And he was insisting, I want shiatsu. So I was like, okay, I don't quite know how shiatsu is going to fix all of these problems, because it was constipation and diarrhea, sort of vacillating between them. It was not able to sweat, not able to have emotions. Um, the list goes on. It was a very long list of issues. So I went, okay, you want shiatsu? Let's do shiatsu. After the first session, the constipation and diarrhea issue balanced out, and that went back to normal. After the second issue, he started sweating. After the third issue, something else happened. So we went each session, another layer released. And by the time we got to the eighth session, client burst into tears and was sobbing and laughing all at the same time. It's like all these lists of emotions that came up. And then from there, the actual backstory came out as to why and what had caused this major blockage for him. And we sorted that out in that last session. But it took 8 sessions of peeling away. And it would not have been the approach that I would have selected if the client had said, here's all my issues, what do you suggest I do? So I do feel that it's very important to follow the innate wisdom of the client as well. It's a collaboration. It's not me doing the work. So it's not surgery. With surgery, you basically give over your, and I don't want to say give over your power, but you step back and you take a passive approach. Whereas with holistic healing, you take a more active approach. You are collaborating with the healer, and the healer is collaborating with the client.
A lot of practitioners at the moment, they'll have one modality like TRE, for instance, or homeopathy or something. So they would recommend their skill set that they have. But it's important, I think, to collaborate with the client, like you said, and discuss with them what is the approach that we would want to take, and it might not be one that you would think of. And I guess for me, my ego should also be able to be put aside to say, well, if I don't have that modality, you should rather go see this person because they'll probably help you better, because it's an emotional issue, or I don't know, it's a past life trauma and I don't do past life trauma, so go see that person.
That was exactly my point I wanted to bring across next. It's not just a collaboration between you and the client, but sometimes it's also a collaboration between you and other healing practitioners. So it's about being able to recognize and realize that, oh, I don't have the capacity or the knowledge right now to do this, but that person can do it, and to refer on. So if you've got a network of other practitioners that you're working with, to refer them on to each other. And when I refer, I don't expect anything in return. Um, I have come across some people who say, "Oh, I referred this person to you, and so I want 50% of whatever you make from the session," or something like that. I don't do any of that. So I've always been very selfless and open. If I can't do something, go there, um, or go to that person for this particular thing. And I always believe that also working with other healers in collaboration, if I'm working with a psychologist, for example, or even a medical doctor, while working on a client's case, that's even better because then we can all collaborate together. So that's also good work to do.
That's a lovely segue that I'd like to actually explore better, because I have a lot of clients who come to me who are on multiple pharmaceutical medications. A lot of them on chronic medications. Diabetes is probably like the most common one, blood pressure, blood thinners, I think, antidepressants, right? I mean, these are the common ones that I would say half of the people that come to my practice are on some sort of chronic medication. So you're saying working with the doctor, collaborating. How would you go about that, and how are they open to it? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so with medication, there's always side effects. If medication does not have a side effect, it doesn't work. So that's just the nature of the beast. Medication has to have a side effect. That's the proof that it works. Um, the thing is that some medications would affect people in different ways. So what you can do is you can actually muscle test with kinesiology the medication against the client and see whether they're going to have a reaction to it, whether it works in the body or not. And then if it doesn't work, you can always test generic um, medications to find the one that's going to work the best with the client. And so if you have a doctor who's willing to work with you on that, it's actually a really good collaboration because you can get better results with less side effects, and it's something that is more beneficial for the client. And for me, the way that I see medication, it's sort of emergency case stuff. You need the medication because it's an emergency. But I don't believe that you should get dependent on it. You should get yourself out of the emergency and then back to normality. And so if you can do a combination of homeopathy or herbalism, for example, to find a different remedy that you can use maybe in conjunction with the medication, to get you back into homeostasis or into balance, then you can slowly let go of the medication. So again, you need to find a doctor who is going to be willing to listen to that and who's going to be open to that. So more integrative doctor usually would work better for that.
I'm curious how you actually do that. Do you actually go and have a call with them, or you start exchanging emails with the doctor and saying, "This is what I want to do. How do we?" Because I mean, the way I see it is they see it as like a different type of science. I mean, the medical system, they even call it alternate medicine, right? They grouped it under.
It should actually be the other way around. Actually, we've got the medicine, they've got the alternative. But anyway, I've done, like when I had my practice in Cape Town, I had most of my clients were psychologists, psychiatrists, and medical doctors and surgeons. Those are my clients. And because they were already my clients, they would send their patients to me. So that worked well. But if you are starting something new, then collaborate with your client first. So you would say to the client, here's the options. If you want to get off the medication, you need to go speak to your medical doctor. This is what you say to them. And if the medical doctor is open to this, let them contact me and we can do a collaboration. We can work together on your case. That would be the easiest way. But if you're going to contact the doctor directly, I don't think it's going to work. So work through the client. The client can then go to the doctor if they are wanting to go that route, and then they can collaborate. You can then collaborate, because then what will happen is I can give a herbal remedy or homeopathic remedy. The doctor is then aware of the fact that the patient is on alternate medication and can then adjust the medication that he prescribes, because the values will have to come down. But if you just go to the doctor and say, "Doctor, I've got high blood pressure," doctor's going to give you high blood pressure medication. So it's going to go, "Here's the one, take that." But if he knows that there's a herbal remedy in the background or a homeopathic remedy in the background that's going to support the high blood pressure or balance it, then he's going to work differently with the medication. So it's actually really important from the patient's perspective or the client's perspective that they also communicate with all of their healthcare practitioners, whether it's alternative or allopathic or medical or surgical or whatever it may be. So it's a collaboration in everyone really. And if you can, I mean, I've worked with many people on antidepressants and on anti-anxiety medication, but then we work with the psychiatrist to then check the values and the numbers. So we've got the herbal remedy coming in, we've got other practices like yoga or meditation coming in, and so then with that, checking the values and then slowly lowering down the medication so that you can get the person off the medication. And then once they're off that, we can get them off the herbs, and then they can just be on their own. So it's, again, for me, medicine is there as an emergency. It's not something that we need to get dependent on. In the same way, healing is also something that is there to get us into balance. It's not something that you have to do all the time. But I do feel that as we have a shower on a regular basis, and we clean ourselves on a regular basis, we cut our hair and our nails on a regular basis, in the same way we need to check our auric field on a regular basis, or we need to check our body system. When we take your car for a service, you need to take your body for a service on a regular basis as well.
But you also mentioned the important tools. I mean, sorry, the important habits, like just having a shower every morning, brushing your teeth, eating, cleaning your nails. You also need to meditate and maybe do some exercise on a daily basis, just as important as sleep. And this is something, I'm also not as disciplined as I should be. I get it in a couple of times a week. Life is busy when you've got children and so many things, but we all know this. This is the age of busyness. There's so much attention on your time, so much responsibilities and things that we need to do. And this is where we have now gone into fast foods, right? This is why fast food, fast life, fast things, everything is fast because.
It's the wrong term, really, because fast food should be just water and air.
But if you think about it, a fruit is pretty fast, right? I mean, I can peel a banana in a couple of seconds and it's there. It's pretty fast. I don't know how much faster you want it.
No, exactly. I mean, I can make a juice within 10 minutes. I can make and consume a juice in 10 minutes.
I know. So it's just propaganda, really, that we've been sold that this fast food. But anyway, the lifestyle has brought all this disease onto us. I think as a collective humanity, the lifestyle that we've chosen, what you choose to consume. The old saying, "You are what you eat." I've upgraded it to say, "You are what you consume." What you eat, what you drink, what you watch, what you listen to, you are what you consume. And that is going to affect your body's energy systems or put it out of balance. And we need to bring it back to balance. But there's layers to it, and this is where you've come in and enlightened me to say, well, there's actually a lot more layers you need to consider, because there are past life issues, there are deeper traumatic issues, there are emotional imbalances. Maybe it's actually maybe it's just a hormone imbalance, or maybe it's just a chemical, or maybe it's something more complex. And this is, as healers, we need to appreciate that and work with the other healers and medical practitioners in our system so we can give the client the best treatment. And I think that's an important thing to understand, is that the client is the center of this. They're the ones who are coming to us for help. It's not us who are the egotistical, all know it all healer. We got to be like, okay, what's the best for this client? Maybe I need to send him to someone else. And I think that's what I need to figure out and learn, is how to know who to refer people to. What is the actual issue that is there, and what can I help, and what do I need to collaborate? So that's a very important lesson, I think, that you've shown me. I need to upskill on.
I think the other thing is also that a lot of healers and patients, clients, the whole, like humans in general, approach disease as the enemy. They see it as some evil thing, as some dark force that's coming over, that's trying to kill you and take you away. And the thing is that if you approach disease from a different perspective, as a space of an opportunity for growth, then your way that you're going to perceive your disease is going to be very different. It's going to, instead of becoming a fight, it becomes a surrender, and then an exploration on what is the growth opportunity here. How can we grow through this specific disease? Because disease has a purpose, the same way as a cockroach has a purpose. When we get a cockroach in the kitchen, most people go, "Oh, dirty cockroach," and they have a fight to try and get the cockroach out. But perhaps your kitchen is dirty. If your kitchen was clean, the cockroach wouldn't want to be there. So a lot of our work is really about cleaning up the kitchen.
Yes, because it's actually information, and that's what I think we should understand. The disease is information. It's telling us actually what's going on within the body. If you can understand the language that it is speaking, it is actually giving you a lot of insight to actually what you need to sort out and solve. It's just the language that we have lost, right, over the years. We've lost how to listen to it. Because if you knew exactly, like, oh, I got I don't know, but just using a silly example, like, oh, I got my orange colored phlegm. Okay, I know that it means something in my gallbladder. So I'll just do a quick gallbladder flush and, you know, happy days, then everything's sorted. But it's really understanding our bodies and taking ownership of our bodies, right? So instead of passing it on to the other person, and I think that's what the medical system has taught, like, hand over your health to us, we will look after look after your health. But that is not really working too well.
There is a time and place for that. Like I said, if there's an emergency, if you broke your bone, you need that emergency treatment. You need to get set it. Doctor is there for that. But if you can see that there's an emotional or a spiritual or even a mental pattern that is leading you down a road that could potentially break your leg, then you could not block that, but stop that. You can then work with that emotional or mental pattern and fix it so you don't have to break your leg. Problem is, most people are too busy running around, and they don't listen to the warning signs, because the body will normally talk to you. It will give you little nudges along the way, and people don't listen to that. So they then wait until they crash down in a heap and then go, whoops, okay, now it's too late. Now I've got to go to the doctor. But if you had listened to the niggles along the way, then that would have worked better or different. It's just a learning opportunity. It's a growth opportunity again.
But I think that's what cancer is, right? It's like maybe decades and decades of nudges that you've ignored, or you've taken medication to mask the symptoms, or to quieten the symptoms, and then after like 3 4 decades you get cancer, and people are like surprised, like, oh no, how did that happen, why did that happen? But if you actually look at the history, it's sometimes quite easy to see, because I've had a few people in my family who've had cancer and passed away, and it was always a shock to us at the time. Also, back then I was a lot younger, so a lot less wiser. But it was a shock to us that, the person got cancer, and then very soon, they had to go through chemo and they passed away. But now looking back, I can see, like, oh, okay, person X was on medication for 30 years. They were taking piles of medication, not dealing with the issue, uh, ignoring the body's nudges, masking them with increased dosages, because every couple of years you have to increase the dosage to 1,000 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams or whatever it is. And then they got cancer and passed away. Now I see that it was actually ignoring the body's talking to you for that long. You end up with a terminal illness. And that's sort of maybe what we can learn to prevent, right? Just by learning to listen to the body early on, listening to the body and aligning with it and being one with it, you can prevent terminal illness. The body should really operate like this for a very long time.
This is why I think for me, a major chunk of my work, I don't see it as healing. I see it more as educating. So my work is to educate or train or teach the client to understand their bodies in a better way and to understand how things work in a better way. So Because if they know how to do it, or if they understand how things work, they don't need me, or they don't need anybody else to go to. So the more people I can educate, the better. So for me, it's not healing per se. Kinesiology, especially, it's an education system. We can educate the client. Look, this is the emotion. Look how your body responds to this. Now let's have a different emotion. Look how the body responds to this. Or here's the food. How does your body respond to this? Let's take it away. How does your body respond to that now? And so we can show the person they can actually physically see and feel it for themselves by a muscle locking or unlocking. So this is it's a good educational system, while it's also a good healing modality. So it's yeah, education.
Yeah, that's actually really cool because I tell my patients, give them the whole spiel about what you consume, start looking at your diet, and really trying to educate them about how their body works and become more aware of it. And I've noticed the clients who adopt some of my sayings, the clients that make more change, I see much faster progress as opposed to the other clients who don't make much change but just take my pills or just take the frequency medicine. You see very slow progress, but it's all about I would say the congregation of multiple energies moving in the same direction. The chariot just moves much faster, right? If all the horses are pulling in the same direction, type of thing. So before we close off, there was something I wanted to ask you because I've come across this term called contraindication, which is where different chemicals or different pharmaceutical drugs have different chemicals and they can actually interact badly when in the body because we don't know about it because it's actually never tested, right? Maybe you're taking a depression tablet and you're taking blood pressure tablets. They actually never tested in the external world if these chemicals, what happens when you put them together. But in the body, they might have an adverse impact. How would you go about testing for that, like contraindication? Because there's so many variables or options, or permutations.
Well, we've got very specific things as well to look for, and I think again it comes with experience. It comes with time. You know when to look for certain things and where to look for it. When it comes to anything that you're going to put into your mouth, that you're going to consume, whether it's medicine or whether it's food, those things can be tested. Again, with kinesiology, we can quite accurately test whether something is going to work against something else. Um, but again, I would normally look at the medication that the person is taking, and then you test against that. So, yeah. And again, if something is not working, you can test whether there's generic that can work. So if you've got the generics, you can test around that because sometimes the values, the ingredients, the active ingredient values are slightly different within the generics. So if you can find a generic that's got a better balance, then that's better. But again, for me, my main approach is to try and get the person off the medication. Medication is good for a while, but it's not good forever because a lot of people start with high blood pressure medication. That gives them the side effect of raising the sugar levels. Then they get sugar tablets, which then has the side effect of raising water levels. And then you get tablets for the water, and then your cholesterol goes up. Then you get cholesterol tablets. So it's like this domino effect where the one leads to another pill, and before you know it, you've got 14 pills that you are on, each with their cascade of side effects. And then when people finally get to the point where they go, oh, I want to get off the 14 tablets, they want to try and get off all 14 at the same time, which is not always possible. So sometimes we've got to reverse engineer it, and we've got to go, okay, we can remove this one and then replace it with a herb for a period. Let's get the balance right. And then we do the next, and we slowly can take the person off the medication. But I've had quite good success with getting people completely off all medication and off the herbs as well. I had a client who I think she took about 9 sleeping tablets at night just to fall asleep. And then she would wake up in the middle of the night and take another 6. That was her routine. And we got her working with herbal remedy and with kinesiology. We got her off to have 3 sleeping tablets just to fall asleep, and then to take herbs in the middle of the night. And she would take the herbs at night as well. And then we've eventually got her completely off the medication and off the herbs, and she now sleeps without any problem.
So, Marcus, what about people that have had organs removed? You know, it's a common thing. Surgery needs to pay the bills. Like gallbladders, for instance, are a very common thing. They get removed. There is, I had a patient who had part of their thyroid gland removed. They had a growth on their thyroid, so that got removed. So then they have to take medication, or at least this is what we're taught. They have to be on some medication forever because there is actually no way. Or maybe the other example, my dad has a stent in his heart, so they've got him some heart medication that he has to take. I mean, are you saying there's alternatives to that as well, or there's a way around that? Because are those cases that are
It's one of those things again where the person waited too long, and now you get to the point where the approach they took a wrong approach. Because if you look at the two terms healing and cure, cure comes from Latin cura, which means to cut away, and healing comes from the Germanic helen, which means to make whole. So healing doesn't always lead to a cure, and cure doesn't always lead to healing. So with cure, which is what the doctors do, they're very quick to cut away and to remove. But if you had taken a healing approach, you wouldn't have to cut away, because like with a thyroid, for example, you can find out, why is the thyroid out of balance? How can we bring it back into balance? What do you need to do? Perhaps it is that you're not speaking up, you're not speaking your truth, you're not living your truth. It could be something as simple as that. Get the person back into their purpose, into speaking the truth, coming back into authenticity, and then the hormone levels readjusts. So it depends on the approach. And many times with the cures of where they cut away a gallbladder or cut away a half a thyroid or whatever, that's at a stage where the doctors are doing the best they can with the abilities and the techniques that they have. But other approaches could have been better. But again, the selection or the choice was made, and so this is a healing opportunity and a growth opportunity for that person. And in some situations, yes, you may have to be on medication for the rest of your life, like if you have removed something that is actually important, that produces a hormone or that produces whatever in the body that's needed. In a case like that, you will have to supplement. But on an energetic level, even if you cut away the gallbladder or the thyroid, etherically it's still there, energetically it's still there. So on an energetic level, we can still work with those things. It's not going to replace the hormone, it's not going to bring that back, but we can reduce the side effects with the medication.
That is so amazing. I think we could talk for hours and hours because you are such a wealth of information. Dr. Marcus, we really appreciate your time. I look forward to chatting with you further because the topics you mentioned that I haven't covered, like auric field, and other energy work, we would love to talk about that. So, Dr. Marcus, we have come to the end of our show, but thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and really helping us becoming a better healing community for the planet by working together, collaborating, sharing knowledge, passing clients to each other, and just really setting our ego aside. So thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
So guys, everyone, I am going to leave details to Dr. Marcus van der Westhuizen. Check out the link below the video. Go to his website. He's got so many modalities. Go check him out. He's got a lot of information and content out there. And till next time, ciao for now.